right, welcome everyone, and happy Chodesh Shvat. Good Chodesh to everyone. May this be a huge month for the Jewish people, for the whole world. The world should have so much blessing, so much light, so much goodness, so much godly flow, and so much divine discovery and insight each and every one of us. So I'm excited to bring you class number 8 in the series, and this might be the last class in the series. Let's see how things will go. But I think this might be wrapping it up. The series called Mashiach Update 2026-5786, in which we've been kind of like refreshing some of the ideas we spoke in the past, but kind of bringing it all together in one concentrated series of classes. I would recommend highly to anybody listening to this class. This is a class number 8, which is assuming that you have, the listener and all of you have already heard earlier classes, because it's a build-up. So it's really, really not recommended to listen to this without the earlier classes. So that, again, you can look these classes up. They're called Mashiach Update 2026. You'll find all these classes on YouTube, Spotify. By the way, I just want to let people know, all these classes are available on Spotify as well. And I know a lot of you tune in to me on YouTube, but you can try other channels, especially when you're driving in the car. It's harder to be on YouTube. That's very distracting. So you're only listening. But to listen on Spotify or other podcast formats, you can find the classes. Okay, let's jump right into it. It's class number 8, and 8 is particularly Mashiach's energy. And in this class, we are going to particularly focus on the time, these 3 months that we're entering right now, Hebrew months, for the month of Shevat, Adar, and the month of Nisan. Why this is the hottest zone for Mashiach, and why this year is such a hot year. So like everything is like really coming to a crazy, I don't even know what to say, crescendo. It's all reaching the grand finale now. And obviously, a lot of it is up to us to put in our best efforts, to be the godliest we can, to shine the most light we can, because all these classes are not meant just to stand by on the side and be a cheerleader. The point over here is to get in the game, to get into the action. How do we get into action? Become active players for Geulah, because each and every one of us can do our part in adding in goodness and kindness and holiness, in spreading Mashiach consciousness, studying more Torah, giving more tzedakah, praying with a little bit more kavanah and a little more consistently, spending more of your time being the godlier self, that the godliest you can be. All of this is contributing. All of this makes it happen. But it helps to understand and to appreciate the cosmic lineup and how everything is lining up in the universe, how everything is coming together, and how we are actually at the grand in completion. So the important points that we've discussed already, in which where we are going to bounce off, just a quick refresher. First of all, a very important class was the 3rd class, where we spoke about a 45-year period, which we are now very much in the 44th year. If that's correct, and I didn't base it off nothing, it was a very serious support that in the book of Daniel, it talks about end time. It talks about, or I like to call it beginning time. It's when we're really going to live. Now, that case, it gives a cryptic time, which, according to what we discussed in class number 3 in this series, and it was confirmed by a statement of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in his introduction to the book Hayom Yom, that there is a specific window for Mashiach. It doesn't mean, God forbid, the window closes. The Mashiach, we wait for him every moment, but there is a specific time that seems to have been predicted from the beginning of time. And that is, there are 2 dates mentioned in the book of Daniel in the last chapter, 1,290 years and 1335. However, all the great thinkers and rabbis were all cracking their heads trying to figure out what that time, end time, is. The book of Daniel himself says that is going to remain a mystery, that no one will be able to figure it out. However, the commentators over the years explicitly state that as we get to the actual time of the redemption, it will be so simple and so easy to figure it out. So at that time we discussed, and again, it wasn't my discovery. I've given the credit to those who have brought this to my attention. But listen to that class. There is two dates, 1290 and 1335, with a 45-year in between. And we have discussed that 1982 was the 1290, and that would lead us to 2027, or 50, or 50 in the Hebrew year, 5787, which is next year, to be the conclusion of the 45 years. Now, that does not, God forbid, mean that all this has to go down at the very last second. God forbid. It shouldn't happen. We shouldn't allow it to happen on the very last second. There's enough here to make it happen this year. Okay? But the main point is to realize that we are very, very much at the very end. So this is important to understand and appreciate. With that in mind, we can then look at this period of time that we're in right now and see how everything is lining up. We discussed a lot in those earlier classes how the whole process of Mashiach, especially in the last class, we fundamentally explained it, is a Mashiach that comes from the bottom up, which means two things. Number one, the coming of Mashiach means that the entire world becomes holy, and the entire world becomes holy not at the time of the redemption. Mashiach's coming is a result of the world becoming holy, as a result of all the work that humanity does while it's still dark. At the time that we do not see yet the light, we do the work. And the work is, what is the work? The work is to make that which is the most unholy holy. To make that which is the least sensitive to God, to make that become sensitive and responsive to Hashem. Which means the purpose is not in heaven, the purpose is earth. And we discussed in the earlier classes, within the earth globe, is a specific emphasis on the lower hemisphere. The lower hemisphere would mean over here the opposite of Jerusalem and Israel, which would include the United States, Australia, this lower part. And when we lift the world up, we lift it up from the bottom. This is the idea. And with this, we were connecting it to the significance of the 250th birthday, which is this year, 2026, of the United States of America, which is related to the uplifting of humanity. If you want more information on that, please listen to those earlier classes. We've also explained how that runs consistently with the teachings that emphasize the importance of elevating the world as a preparation for Mashiach. In other words, in Judaism itself, you can get lost in many other aspects and fail to notice and fail to emphasize the importance of the rectification and the elevation and sublimation and purification of the material world. And it's precisely the Hasidic teachings, which Hasidism comes to prepare the world for Mashiach, that emphasize this work, particularly Chabad Hasidism, which we discussed. Chabad Hasidism is also 250 years old this year, in a certain sense, because the Alter Rebbe the Alter Rebbe, founder of Chabad, opened up his first Hasidic school or Hasidic center, which means a piece of real estate became Hasidic, became Chabad in this sense, when in 1796. So it runs parallel with the United States of America, with the final job of elevating the lower world. We've also had a very fascinating discussion in the earlier classes, how at that very same period of 250 years, tremendous effort is being put in by the other side, by the side that wants to distract us, call it whatever you like to call it, satanic side, dark side, whatever it is. It is meant, and it always tries to derail this process. And that we've seen that Hasidism, and led by the Chabad Rabbis, which are seven generations, they were the ones who fought and prevailed and triumphed and won the war against these negative forces, in which the last manifestation of it is, we've discussed the emphasis of fighting God's kingship in this world, which was primarily that fight, which was going on for 215 years, fighting the world permeated with awareness of God, instead trying to create a utopian, messianic type of dream, but without God in it. But the last and final stage, once that war has been won already, the final stage goes, the theater or the battlefield moves over to Jerusalem. And that's the fight that has been going on for the last 30 so years, where the main emphasis is the Palestinian cause, free Palestine, Al-Aqsa, which is what was the soul of October 7th. It's all one last and final battle that is doomed to fail. And that's where the Iran axis of evil comes into all of this, which we are watching because we are at such a messianic time. We are watching that Iranian axis of evil crumble. Now, I know a lot of the listenership is saying, "Oy, Gewalt, it almost looked like it was happening and Trump changed his mind and it's not." First of all, evil is going to fall with Trump or without Trump. He's not in charge over here. It's God who's in charge. If God is using Trump to help out the situation as a broomstick, could be. And there's a lot of reason to believe so. I also don't believe that it's off the table. I believe that we're still going to see a major fall. Iran, the regime in Iran, not Iran, the regime in Iran is going, I'm not a prophet, but there is no question in my mind that evil is about to crumble. If that's the case, when, what, where, and when, I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I can't tell you which date. But it seems like it's happening in the very, very near future. And let it happen today, and let it happen without any more bloodshed, because it's horrific to see what happened. The people who gave their lives at this point and so far have not pushed it through, although they definitely moved the needle. And I'm sure their blood should not be in vain, although who can estimate the value of a human life? So let's watch, and hopefully we will see that completely be broken. Okay. What we discussed in the last class, and where I'm going to pick up in this class, is why we see the significance of the month of Teves, which is the 10th month in the Hebrew calendar, in which all these significant dates came out that we discussed. Teves, we discussed in last class. In general, we discussed a winter Mashiach. A winter Mashiach means a Mashiach that comes from earth, through the earth. It comes from the world. It's not superimposed by heaven on the world, but it's a process that happens from the world improving itself. And from within the world, it's like we say regarding Mashiach, as tzemach David avdecha meheira tatzmiach. Let Mashiach be as tzemach. Let it be a plant of David, of King David. The Malchus Beis David is compared to a plant that grows and sprouts from the earth, which means it's not a miraculous super event that happens. There is no question that coming along with Mashiach, there will be super miracles, as it's discussed in so many prophecies. As you went out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. But all of that is to add and to boost and to give extra oomph to the fundamental element of Mashiach's coming, which preferably, when we say preferably, means its ultimate form of arrival is through a process of the world elevating itself. That's when it's satisfactory to God. That's the way God ultimately wants it. And that's definitely going to be if Mashiach did not if no one forced the Geulah earlier. And discussed this in our last class. It is possible for Mashiach to come earlier by some kind of powerful force that would have forced the redemption. And that could have been a powerful good force, or it could have been a powerful darkness. A powerful good force would have been, had everybody done super Teshuvah at some time, then it's almost like God would melt from love and he would have to spill the beans before the time. And then whether the world is ready or whether the world is not ready, God would finish the work for us. It's almost like by Egypt. God took the Jewish people 110 years earlier before the due date. The due date for Egypt, for the redemption of Egypt, was 400 years, like God promised Abraham. Yet God sped it up after 210 years. He deducted 190 years. What happened with the purification? It's explained that God orchestrated that purification was done quicker. And that was because it was just too terrible. It had to happen quicker. You just couldn't wait. So the same thing could have been over here as well, is that we could have expedited it by doing Teshuvah at any time, and then Hashem would have brought Mashiach, and then it would have been a more miraculous Superman Mashiach, like we discussed, and as we called it, a summer Mashiach. Remember, the idea of summer is the time when there's more daylight, more divine illumination, and more divine intervention. When it comes to Mashiach, it would mean divine intervention into this world by God doing his thing to make the world Mashiach. It could have been that way, or it could have been, as we discussed in last class, God forbid, the opposite. There would have been such corruption and such darkness that it would be impossible to let the world, God forbid, for the world to fall into such corruption that there would be no repair. So that too would twist God's hand to make an early redemption. It seems like, again, that didn't happen, because based on what we spoke in the beginning of this class, that we've arrived to the window of the 1290, 1335, that case is the Be'ita, which means that end time is the time that's the 400-year period. That's not expediting it earlier. This is the time. And however, with the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, explains that even when Mashiach arrives at its time, it can be be'ita, and its time. That means we wait for the very end of that time. Or it can be that time arrives, and within that time, it can be an achishena, it can be a hastening of that. And I think, if I can make my own observation, based on everything I've been learning and what I've been sharing over here, is that particular formula of having arrived to Be'ita, arrived to the actual end time, and then having the opportunity of the Achishena, of making it hasten and making it come really quick, is what happens within the 45 window. In other words, from 1982 till 2027, within this period, had we put the pedal to the metal, we would have merited to have a redemption earlier. And I think that's the meaning of the Rebbe when the Rebbe was crying out, we want Mashiach now, which we want Mashiach now. That entire campaign and those words and that song and that energy started in 1981 or 82. In other words, right when we reached this time, that's when the demand was. And the Rebbe cried out in the famous talk, Tut altz, you can't do everything you can. The Rebbe was like pushing like crazy Geulah, anybody that knows, because the Rebbe didn't want Chas v'Shalom to wait 45 years. But now, here we are. We are in the 44th year. We're out at the very, very conclusion of it all. Now, going back to what I was saying, in the month of Teves is the main month that represents the work of rectifying the world. The work we discussed in last class, that the sages tell us the secret of the month of Teves. The secret of the month of Teves is the body enjoys the body. Right? We spoke there about why Achashverosh, king of Persia, God orchestrated that Esther should be taken to the king during that month so that he should enjoy her physical company, so that he should fall in love with her, and he should choose her as his queen, so the great miracle can happen for the Jewish people through Esther. Seemingly just a very, very physical type of a statement the sages are saying, but the Rebbe reveals enormous depth in this. That the concept of the body, enjoying the body, means that the month of Teves represents the deeper work. Instead of the work of us connecting to God through our soul, through spiritual activities, which connect our soul and bond our soul with God, there is something much deeper when we work and refine our bodies. And as a result of refining our bodies, we refine also the physical matter of this world. And that's called our guf, our body. And that in particular touches God on a level that's higher than God's soul, so to speak. It's God's body. What that means when it comes to God means it's not Hashem's lights. Soul is usually related to light and illumination. It's not emanations and lights coming from God, which is the external, but rather it's the God's essence. And God's essence takes pleasure when the physical world is uplifted and connected to him. And that particularly is the work that we focus on in the winter, because the winter is a time when there's a lot of darkness and there's no inspiration coming from above, and there's a lot of coldness. Cold and dark represents the opposite of holiness. Very little sunlight, which is representing of the divine shining to the world. God is basically saying, I'm shutting all the lights. You got to find within yourself your own connection to me. And within ourselves, our sun is our soul. That's our sun. When our sun is shining a little bit means that we don't have the inspiration from our own soul. We're left just with the brute physical existence, and yet we can dig out within our physical body and our physical existence. We're not inspired by God's illumination and his light. We are inspired by God's very existence, and we acknowledge that if God's is real, and he is the essence of all reality, so he's the essence of the spiritual, equally that he's the essence of the physical, equal to him being the essence of the spiritual. And therefore, every day and in every moment, even in the most mundane seconds of life, even while I am completely not engaged in something holy and godly, I'm suddenly aware of God's omnipresence, and that the very existence of matter itself is God, because he is, from his existence comes all of existence. There cannot be anything other than him, and that he particularly expresses himself in that which is the most concealing of him. And I'm not going to get into the depth of it. We've already touched upon it in the last class. That is the significance of the month of Teves. And we discussed in earlier class why, based on that, why Maimonides' yahrzeit is in the month of Teves, the day that Maimonides, because Maimonides is the one who's most responsible for fixing the world, because he gave us the foundation of halacha. Halacha is the part of Torah in which we apply the Torah to the world to fix and elevate the world. We discussed why it's the yahrzeit of Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who is the author of Chabad Chassidism, who sent us so much into this avodah, into this type of work of rectifying earth. He spoke about America. He spoke about like that whole talk that we spoke about, his relation to America. He coined the phrase, the lower half of the hemisphere, and how that can only be elevated through revealing the circular lights of God. Circular lights of God, for lack of other words, really means the divine essence, not the narrow illumination of God. This is something that he brought to our attention. So his crown jewel of his achievements is also the rectification of earth. And for that reason, his yahrzeit, which means the day of his passing, which again represents his energy, is also in the month of Teves. And we also discussed why Hey Teves is the victory of this battle for earth. We spoke about the cosmic battle in which the Lubavitcher Rebbe wins his court case, and he declares Dida Natzach, the victory. What's the victory? The victory is that we've staked our flag, and that the Rebbe says, we call out Dida Natzach, means we say to all the detractors, to any force that tries to claim that earth has a chance of becoming corrupted, our answer, and we do confront it, because there's sometimes we have a voice that tries to creep into our own heads and tell us that our bodies are not holy, are not God's space. And that's every time the evil inclination tries to convince us that we can use our bodies in a very ungodly way, in a very unholy way, opposite of the Torah. So our answer to that is, although we don't see it yet, although the lights have not been turned on yet, but our answer to that is, you came too late. It's too late. This has already been conquered. Physicality, the earth, even the lowest hemisphere, has already been made holy. My body is holy. My life is holy. There's nothing in my life. There's no space for you to come anymore and to stake your claim, because we've won already. That was the Didan Natzach victory. And that was the Rebbe when we discussed in our earlier class, where the Rebbe says we take the pans and the pots and we bang it and we scream, we won. You know what that is? It's a certain madness. It's a certain craziness. It's not a rational discussion. Don't sit down with a bow tie or a necktie with your evil inclination and have a philosophical discussion. That's not what we need to do. Get your pots and pans and bang as loud as you can until he can't stand it anymore, like the story we said about the demon, in which you see a drop of blood, till he just bursts because you're telling him the truth. What's the truth? We won already. Earth is holy. This physical world has no more room for perversion, for all the impurity that the Klipa and the Sitra Achra wants to represent. Based on all of that, we also discussed the significance of the 10th day of Teves, but I'm going to leave that last point to come back to that in a few minutes. So based on all that, I want to go to today's class and discuss the sequence in general of the whole idea of the winter Mashiach. And I'd like to speak about, tonight is the month of Shvat, the significance of the month of Shvat and the month of Adar and the month of Nisan, mainly the next 2 months, Adar and Nisan, how this is really the crux of the Geulah, okay, of the redemption. To understand that, I want to just give a brief overview over the 6 months of winter, okay? Because if we're saying that it's possible to have a summer redemption and a winter redemption, let's understand what each month of winter contributes to this completion of redemption. So we begin like this. In general, there is a concept that there is 12 months of the year, and the 12 months of the year are divided in there. They can be set up in 6 months corresponding to 6 months. The 6 months of the summer, spring, summer, and early fall, okay, is basically, it works in the Hebrew months. It begins in the month of Nisan, which most of the time is March, April. And then, so that's the month of Nisan, and it goes until the month of Tishrei. So I'm sorry, till the month of Elul. Elul is the last month. Elul is usually August, September. Okay? And that's the conclusion of the 6 months of summer. Then there is the next 6 months begins with Tishrei, which is when Rosh Hashanah is. Okay, the beginning of the new year, and those 6 months run through the winter. And the last of them being the month of Adar, the month of Purim, the month of the great, right, festive, joyous holiday of Purim. So there's a teaching of the great Arizal that says that these 6 months and 6 months, they stand parallel one to each other, but 6 months of the summer are male months, and 6 months of the winter are female months. So what does that mean? Just very briefly. Male represents the influencer. Female is the recipient. Or male represents energy and female represents container and vessels. These are very deep Kabbalistic concepts and concepts in Chassidism. Those of you who studied it can know about it. It's not important for this class to really elaborate on it. But the idea is, in our relationship with God, God is the boy and we are the girl, depicted in the tabernacle, which in the ark, the holy ark, the ark of the covenant, there were 2 bird-like features, cherubs. One of them had a boy face and one had a girl face. And this represented God and Israel, the love that there is. So God is male in this sense, because he's the one who's bestowing, and we are his recipients. We are his wife, his bride, his love. Okay? So, in the summer months, God's energy is more dominant. That's why it's called male months. In the winter months, God is waiting for us. The female energy is more dominant. God wants a relationship with us, but he wants the relationship with us to be contingent on us. It should be coming from us. Or we might put the difference between the months, as we discussed earlier. The summer months are more spiritual, and winter months are more physical. Okay, hence the darkness, the long nights, everything that we discussed earlier. Okay, now there are two pivotal months that kind of begin these energies. These are two super months of the Hebrew calendar, and that is the two beginnings of the Hebrew calendar. It's very interesting. The Jewish calendar has two beginnings, two heads. In the month of Nisan, which is that March-April month, okay, that month is the beginning of, it's the first month. But it's not the beginning of the year, but it's the first month. We count Nisan as month number 1, ER month number 2. What happened in that month? God took us out of Egypt. Now, the month of Tishrei is a parallel, dynamic month. Most of our holidays, by the way, exist, or the biblical holidays at least, exist in these 2 months. Passover in Nisan, and Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Powerful months. These are the 2 polar months in the calendar, the 2 super months. Now, the difference between them is very interesting. Nisan, the month of April, is a male month in the fact that we didn't do anything for us to go out of Egypt. We were passive recipients. We were so stuck. We were so broken. We didn't really have, sages say that we were already in the 49th gate of impurity. We almost fell into a point where there's no repair. God, with his infinite goodness and kindness, came and with his benevolence elevated us, lifted us, hugged us, embraced us, took us out of Egypt, brought us to Mount Sinai, revealed his Torah to us, downloaded his Torah to the Jewish people. So you see that the energy that begins that entire 6 months period is all an energy flowing from God to us. The month of Tishrei, let's skip over to the month of Tishrei, as we say which would be corresponding to like October, late September, October, is very much a time of also full of biblical holidays, but the essence of those holidays are all Teshuvah. Teshuvah means repentance, and repentance means returning to God. Returning to God after we've disconnected from him. God comes down in the month of Nisan. He reaches for us. He showers us with love. He's shining to us limitlessly with all of his light. And we, of course, are mesmerized by it, but after a while we get bored. And as we've seen, we made mistakes, and we kind of don't take him that seriously. He gets upset and he leaves. That all transpires in the summer. That's why we know the Jews made the golden calf. Also because God stepped away for a few minutes. In other words, they were so dependent on God shining upon them. And who's the godly person? Moses, who's God's emissary from above. Moses steps away for 40 days, and we're so bewildered because we haven't developed any holiness from within ourselves. Everything, we're leaning only on him. Okay? We're only leaning on him. The moment he stepped away and stayed 1 day longer, we couldn't handle it, and we sinned. God gets upset. Moses shatters the tablets. That all takes place in the summer. And we are then broken, and we begin a process of Teshuvah, of soul searching, till we can find it within ourselves. What do we really want? Not coming from God. What's our desire? And that Teshuvah process primarily takes place in the last month of the summer months, Elul. That's the last month of the summer months. But it leads into the super month of the high holidays, which is Tishrei, and begins with Rosh Hashanah, when we are blowing shofar. We are reaching for God. We're crying out from the deepest core of our being, we want you. You are our king. We have no one but you. It's us. It's It's the world reaching for its creator, not the creator revealing himself to the world. Of course, God is reciprocating, just like we reciprocated when God extended himself to us and he said, do you want my Torah? We reciprocated and said, yes, we do want you. So it's not like, you see, you have to realize that in winter and summer, there is a combination of energies going in both directions. The question is, what's the dominating one? The month of Nisan, the summer months, God dominates and we are responding. In the winter months, we're the ones dominating from below and God is responding to us. He's reciprocating to us. But we know that in the month of Tishrei, because it's coming from us, it is so much more satisfactory to God. So although it takes a sin, it takes a disconnect, it takes a certain shattering of the relationship so that we can come back and build a much deeper relationship. But we know that when we come back and we return back into God's favor, it's not going back to the place we were before. We go so much more deeper. And the reason is because when a husband and wife who really love each other get into a good fight, and it's not comfortable for neither of them, it hurts them, it pains them, and they could be at it for a while, but then one of them or both of them find the courage to forgo on whatever it is, their ego or whatever it is, and seek the other one out, and they come back and they ask for each other's sincere forgiveness, and they come back to their love. Their bond that they have now is so much stronger and deeper. After a deep fight, there is a deeper reunification. And that's the reason why through the month of Tishrei, the bond that we get on Sukkot and the joy is even much greater than Passover. Because it's our work. It's from below. That sets the tone for Mashiach. Mashiach is not meant to be, our first redemption, when we went out of Egypt, it was a male redemption, meaning completely coming from God. This redemption is, Maimonides tells us the Jewish people will not be redeemed, based on what the Talmud says, unless we do Teshuvah. It's our returning to God. So that's the same reason that we discussed earlier, that the energy of this redemption is a winter energy. Although the pivotal moment of redemption is still going to be in the month of Nisan, which we'll explain soon, yet the dynamic of the redemption has a winter flavor to it. It begins with Tishrei. Tishrei is where we set the tone through our essence being revealed. What's our essence? Our essence of our soul cannot bear being godless. So even when we lose God's Wi-Fi, you see, as long as we're doing mitzvot and we're connected to God, we have a signal. Our soul senses the divine warmth and the divine vibrations, and all is good. We mess up, we lose that signal. And we can be lost and empty and we can fall into such indifference, apathy, or we can fall in because we're so empty, because we disconnected from the love of our life. So what happens to us then is that we start to seek, because of that emptiness, we start to fill that emptiness with more deprivation. We try to seek all kinds of other things to substitute God, whether it becomes an obsession with money, whether it becomes an obsession with physical pleasure, whatever it is, all of that causes, and that can, we all don't have to go explain the cycle. That causes more distance and more distance. But at a certain point, here is where it's at. This is what Teshuvah is. You reach that point where you can't anymore. And you ask yourself, and from the depth of your soul, you realize, I cannot be without you, God. And that's where the neshama, the soul, erupts, and that's where the Teshuvah comes. And that's where the return to Hashem happens. And that's where our essence is revealed. And when our essence is revealed, it touches the divine essence. That's the Teshuvah. That's the month of Tishrei. Once we connect to God on that level of Tishrei, the next couple of months are all going to follow on that, but we've set the stage for Mashiach, for the winter Mashiach already in the month of Tishrei. I'm not going to speak about the month of Cheshvan, the next month in this process. Number one, I don't have that much to say in exactly what the contribution of the month of Cheshvan is, although I did think about it a little bit today, but I don't want to, let's skip that. Let's go to the third month. Just like when we went out of Egypt, Nisan is a very powerful month. God performs all the miracles, mainly the plague of the firstborn, takes the Jewish people out, takes them to the Red Sea, splits the sea for them, right? That's event number one that happens in the first month. But then the second month is kind of an ordinary month. It's special because every day we're counting our way. It's the month of Iyar. No great spectacular events happen, but we are doing the work every day to get ready for Sinai. But the next major event happens in the third month of the Jewish calendar when God is giving the Torah. So let's look at corresponding to that, the 6 months of the winter, the female months, the months of the deeper connection to God that characterizes not the first redemption, but characterizes the ultimate redemption, when the connection to God is going to be of essence, because it's coming from below, it's not coming from above, it's coming from earth, it's coming from, right? So, what happens in the third month? What's the greatness of the third month? The third month is the month of Kislev. And watch this. The month of Kislev also has the same idea of the giving of the Torah. However, the month of Kislev, the Torah that is given is Mashiach's Torah. See, the Torah is given to us in 2 increments. The Torah was given to us at Sinai, 3,300 and about 7 years ago. Something like that, 36 years ago, 37 years ago. The Torah that was given at Sinai is God downloading the Torah to us. In essence, it's explained in Chassidism that everything that we will ever discover in the Torah was given to us at Sinai. That means God is never going to give us another Torah. There was only one Torah. However, the Torah that we got in Sinai has 2 parts to it. An outer part, which is more its outer light, and the inner nucleus of it. The inner nucleus of the Torah, or what we might call the essence of that Torah, was locked, and it's only going to be unlocked in the time of Mashiach. And that idea is called Ki Torah Chadasha Me'iti. It says Ki Torah Me'iti Teitze. There's a verse that says, because Torah will come out from me. And the Midrash says that the meaning of Ki Torah Me'iti Teitze means Ki Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitze. A new Torah will come out of God. Now, the Midrash could not be saying, God forbid, a concept of a new Torah. It's one of the principles in Judaism. Zosa Torah lo tahei mechulefes. There will never be another Torah. The law of Moses is the only Torah that we have. And this is going to be the Torah, and no one can make monkey business with the Torah. No one can change it even one tiny bit. True. But in terms of the secrets of the Torah, the deeper light of the Torah is going to be revealed in the time of Mashiach. Rashi says it in Song of Songs, in Shir HaShirim, when the verse says, Yishakenu min neshikos piu, God is going to kiss us with the kiss of his mouth. It says it in future. And Rashi says it means that at the time of the redemption, the kiss of God is that God is going to transmit to us, he's going to reveal to us, Tamei Torah, the reasons of the Torah. The Tamei Torah loy nizgalo, the reasons of the Torah. What does that mean? The inner essence, the inner light of the Torah, the inner core of the Torah was not revealed. Now, even though it was not revealed fully, it's going to be revealed in the time of Mashiach. It started to send its signals and its vibrations, and it started to leak. Let's call it this way. It began leaking to the world with the revelation of Kabbalah, mainly from the time of the Ari. I'm not going to go into the sources to this, but there's from the time already from the Holy Ari, this takes you back to the year 1573 to the city of Shvat, where these deeper secrets of Torah that were hidden from the world for 2,500 years started to emerge at that time. And then a major opening of the secrets of the Torah was Mashiach Torah, future Torah, was with the revelation of Chassidism, the Baal Shem Tov, and then the great, and which we know that the Baal Shem Tov had an encounter with Mashiach. He went up, we discussed it in one of these classes, and he went to Mashiach's chamber, and he said to him, when will the master come? And Mashiach said to him, when your Torah will spread across the world, which means your Torah is the precursor to Mashiach. Why? Because the Baal Shem Tov's Torah is the light of Mashiach, and it is the future Torah. It's the foretaste of the future Torah. Now, where did it really burst open? It burst open in the month of Kislev. Because in the month of Kislev, we have the holiday called Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev. The significance of this holiday, it is the greatest, most important day, we might say, on the Chabad calendar. What is the Yom Tov of the 19th of Kislev? It commemorates Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi that we discussed earlier, the first Chabad Rebbe, was arrested through false accusations by the Tsarist government. He was taken for questioning for 53 days. I mean, he was incarcerated during those 53 days. He had to prove his innocence. And on that day, the 19th of Kislev, he was liberated. But the deeper story, we don't have time for all the long story, but the deeper story is that he himself explained that there was a tremendous accusation against him for being the one who is teaching the Baal Shem Tov's Torah to the masses in a way that no one taught before. Someone who was bringing the new Torah to the world, the deeper Torah, the essence of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. He's spilling the beans like no one did it before him. And therefore, there's an accusation in heaven. Too much light is being revealed. And therefore, there was this, it materialized in his life being endangered down here below. God forbid, had they then been able to do what they wanted to do with the Alter Rebbe. Initially, he was taken for treason. They could have very easily taken his life. Had they done that to him, it would have snuffed out the entire future of Chassidism. And therefore, on the 19th of Kislev, the day that he had his victory, that's the day which became the symbol, not just the symbol, it became the day that the energy flow of the internal faucet, God turns on the inner light, and that Torah flows to the world. However, here's the main point. What differentiates that Torah, the inner Torah, from the esoteric Torah, the Torah of Mashiach, from the Torah of the past, is that the Torah of the past is all coming from up down. It's coming from a flow from above. The Torah of Mashiach is coming from the bottom up. Number one, it comes through darkness. It's just like we said earlier that when we do Teshuvah, why do we do Teshuvah? When does a person come to return to God? It comes after a breach in the relationship, after a break, after you're struggling with your own darkness, after you think you can live a godless existence, but yet deep inside you can't handle it until it breaks open. The thickness, the barriers just melt away because the soul in its essence it's godly. The same way, it's after thousands of years of darkness, of exile, and the Jewish people are, as collectively, are so seeking to return to God. So the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov and the Torah of the Alter Rebbe is the bursting forth of the Torah, the hidden wisdom that is buried in the Jewish soul. It's flowing from the bottom up. And by the way, it's very interesting that the main call of Chassidism is that every person needs to do Teshuvah. Even the biggest tzaddik, even the most greatest tzaddikim, even the most righteous people, which until the time of the Baal Shem Tov felt satisfied with their service of God, are told, no, you too need to do Teshuvah. Which means that really, in essence, the entire Hasidic movement is a Teshuvah movement. Which means it's a Torah of Teshuvah. It's a Torah of Baalei Teshuvah. It's the Torah coming from the woman. It's coming from earth to God, not from God to the world. And that's the reason why. And that's the power of, it's the third month. Torah belongs always to month number 3. Because, again, I'm saying a lot of deep ideas here. This is just like a summary. Torah belongs to the third month because Torah is meant to be a bridge between God and the world. How does God connect to the world? Through the Torah. A bridge has to connect two entities, so the bridge is number 3. It's like a peacemaker. There are two people, 2 entities that are in a fight. Comes in a consultant, comes in a mediator, and the mediator makes peace between the two. So the sages tell us, the Torah comes to make peace in the world. The ultimate peace means to make peace between God and his creation. So therefore, the Torah belongs to number 3. There's a long passage in the Talmud, the Masechtas Shabbos, Tractate Shabbos, where the Talmud connects everything about the Torah to number 3. It was given on the 3rd month and on the 3rd day, and it was given through Moshe, who's the 3rd in his family. And Moshe belongs to, and Rabbeinu Nisan says on the side, Moshe comes from the tribe of Levi, and Levi is the 3rd one of the tribes. And the Torah itself is a triple Torah, because the Torah scripture is made up in 3 parts: the 5 books of Moshe, the prophets, and the writings. And it's given to the Jewish people, who are a triple people, because the Jewish people are divided in Kohanim, Levites, and Israelites. So that you see, the Talmud is saying the Torah is all about number 3. However, this messenger that's coming to act as the 3rd party, to connect heaven and earth, or to connect God to the world, creator and creation, can either be an emissary from God to us, or it can be an emissary from us to God. It can be coming from our desire to cleave to him, or it can come from his desire to connect to us. The first Torah that was given when we went out of Sinai, which means the first download of Torah, the first release of Torah, which was the initial element, the first stage of our relationship, was coming from above. And therefore it happened in the summer months, which the summer months is all male months, when male, which is God, is reaching for us. The second dose of Torah, the Moshiach Torah, the Torah of the Geulah, happens also in the 3rd month, because it belongs to Torah is number 3, but it's the 3rd month of the winter. What's also fascinating, the Rebbe points out, just briefly, is that the 19th of Kislev and Hanukkah, by the way, which are the 2 holidays of the month of Kislev, both happen in the second half of the month, not in the first half of the month, of the lunar month. Anybody know what the difference, how would you understand the difference between the first half of the month, second half of the month? We all can see it. First half of the month, the light of the moon is getting brighter and brighter. And the second half of the month, the light of the moon is getting lesser and lesser. What causes the moon to have more light or less light? So it's the reflection of how the moon is reflecting the light of the sun. So the first half of the month represents the time when the sun is shining on the moon. If it's sun shining on the moon, meaning that the moon is bright. But why is she bright? Because she's receiving light from the sun. It's not her light. The second half of the month represents actually where God is retracting his light, and he wants our light. And that's why the holidays of the month of Kislev, since Kislev is winter, which represents the energy of Teshuvah, us coming from us to God, the holidays are in the second half of the month. Hanukkah was also a time of darkness, and the Jewish people fought. It wasn't like a miracle from above. They went to war. They were not going to let the Greeks contaminate. It was a very introductory to Mashiach, Hanukkah. And what did they find? They found the oil. And oil represents essence. And by the way, the secrets of the Torah are called the oil. So already Hanukkah, which is also in the winter, is already a taste of Mashiach's light. It's celebrated with the oil. It's in the latter part of the month of Kislev. At least it starts at the end of a month. And the 19th of Kislev also is in this latter half of the month. Again, indicating the Torah from below, the Torah from us, but the Torah from us is a much deeper Torah than the Torah that is given to us from above. Because when we are unearthing what God planted inside of us, then even when God reciprocates to us, he's reciprocating from a much deeper place. Because it's so much more meaningful to him, that we are turning to him, as opposed to him chasing after us. With this, I'm going to add another nugget over here that's going to make it so amazing. We also know the day of the month of Kislev, in which we commemorate this new burst of Moshiach Torah, which is the Torah of the Baal Teshuvah, of the returnee. It's the Torah that is about that. It's interesting that one of the differences between the upper Torah and the lower Torah is the upper Torah doesn't focus so much on the physical world, or at least it's not so clear that the objective is the physical world. Although God gives us all mitzvahs to do in the physical world, we can study it and believe that the point of these mitzvahs is just to test us in this world, so eventually we can go up to heaven and enjoy God in heaven. Where do we get an appreciation that the purpose is earth and it's about earth? Only in the Torah of Mashiach, which means only in the Torah of Chassidus, which is the Torah of the winter, which is the Torah of when the body enjoys the body. Again, winter time, Kislev. So now, to add another nugget to this, 19 is a very significant number. We know the first couple, Adam and Eve. Adam, here's a very deep, incredible teaching from the Ari, the great Kabbalist. Ari says that Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, make up the sum totality in their original form of the divine structure of God and the Shekhinah, which means the male and female elements of the divine. Okay? How so? God's name, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, the most important name or highest name of God, we know in Jewish numerology equals 26. Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26. Fine. We also know that the Yud Kei Vav Kei of God's name has hidden letters in it. That means, in addition to the Yud being 10, if you spell out the letters that are hidden, like we mentioned it earlier in one of the classes, or many times, if you spell the word Aleph, the word Aleph means one. It's the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and the number associated to it is one. However, if you spell out the word Aleph, you have Aleph Lamed Pei, that gives you have hidden letters that you just don't see it. When you write an Aleph, you don't see it, but when you write it out or you say it out, Aleph, La, it's an L there and a P there as well, Aleph or F. So when you write that out, it actually equals 111, because Lamed Pei plus Aleph is 111. I'm just giving you. It can be one if you're looking at the outside, but if you're looking at the inside, it's another 110 there. Okay. So in the Yud Kei Vav Kei, it says, well, the hidden letters in the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Yud has another Vav Dalet hidden there, another 10. So the Yud together with the Vav Dalet makes it 20, because Yud itself is 10 plus another Vav Dalet. Vav is 6 and Dalet is 4 is 20. The Hey, for this purpose, it's not the only way to spell a Hey, but for this purpose we spell it with an Aleph. So Hey and an Aleph is 6, so we're already 16. The Vav is spelled Vav Aleph Vav, like it sounds, Vav Aleph Vav. So that's another 13. 16 plus 13 is 29. 16 plus 13 is 29. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. It's 20. Sorry, I made a mistake. Let's go back. Yud is already 20. The Hey is another 6, so it's not 16. It's 26. Sorry. Then Vav is another 13. So it brings you to 39. Hey is another 6. So together it's 45. So God's name spelled out completely is 45. And watch the magic. That's the numeric value of the word Adam. Adam is Aleph, Dalet, Mem. 45. Okay. Adam is 45. And we know that, okay, so that's the significance of the human. He's meant to bring down and express the Yud Kei Vav Kei, fine. But Adam, God created him Zachar u'Nekeva Baram. God created him male and female. So who's completes Adam? Chava. What's the numeric value of the name Chava? Chava is spelled Ches Vav Hey. Ches Vav Hey, just the outer letters, not going into the inner letters now. Chava, Ches Vav Hey. Ches is 8, Vav is 6, 14. Hey is 5. 14 plus 5 is 19. Chava is 19. Okay. Now watch this. Go back to Adam, which is 45. Let's separate the outside of God's name from the inside of God's name. We said before that when you take God's name, the tetragrammaton, and you calculate the outer letters, but also the hidden letters, you get 45. But if you only look at the outer letters, it's 26, as we said earlier. So 45 minus 26. Let's subtract the 26 and let's look just at the inside letters. Just the inside letters, without the outside letters. Only the hidden letters. So 45 minus 26 is 19. That means Chava, Eve, she is the internal element. She's the hidden letters inside Adam. So now, which day of the month of Kislev was the giving of the secret of the Torah of Mashiach? The 19th. 19th, the numeric value of Eve, which means this is the Torah of the female. It's the Torah coming from the world. But the Torah from the female, when the Torah comes from the female, it reaches into God's essence deeper than what he emanates to us when he's just coming as a male, coming to court us and to romance us on his own. That's always from his external self. It doesn't touch his essence. When it's coming from us, it unplugs his essence. And the relationship is one of essence. And that is Chassidus. And that's the significance of the month of Kislev, of the winter. So now follow along. In order to initiate Geulah, to initiate the ultimate redemption, we begin with the month of Tishrei. The month of Tishrei is our Teshuvah, which our Teshuvah creates the bond of essence to essence. In the third month, God gives us the Torah, or rather, we produce the Torah together with God. But the point over here is, in the month of Kislev, we take it a step deeper. We don't just have the bond of our souls to God, but we have the tools with what to influence and uplift the world. We need the Torah of Mashiach before we can have the actual Mashiach. That comes to us also in the winter. That's why the Chabad holiday, the big Chabad holiday, is a winter holiday, because the entire contribution of Chassidism, which is the ultimate contribution of the Mashiach that comes on time, the Mashiach that is the Mashiach when the world is completed to its completion, not a superimposed Mashiach, but a Mashiach that has to do with the world having reached its worked out whatever it needs to work out. Then we have Mashiach of the winter. So the Torah that we get is also an essential Torah, a Torah of the winter in the month of Kislev, the third month. Where does that lead us into? It leads us into the month of Teves. The month of Teves, which is the month we just completed, is that cold, freezing month, the longest nights, winter solstice. It's the freezing, long nights of winter. But the month of Teves, as we discussed earlier, represents the time that we do the work. Which work? The work that Chassidism teaches us we need to do. What kind of focus does the inner Torah give us? The deeper, essential Torah, the oil that we discover in the month of Kislev. Where does it lead us to? What does it ask of us? It asks of us to rectify the body, to bond our body with God. That's the month of Teves. So the month of Teves represents, once we have the Torah of Mashiach instructing us of what kind of work does it take to bring Mashiach. The work that it takes to bring Mashiach is the month of Teves. And that's all the holidays that we discuss, significant days in the month of Teves, are all directing us to the work. And even the last holiday, it's all about the work has been completed. The last holiday, I mean the Yontiv of Hey Teves, which again celebrates the victory of what the work has been done. What's the work? The work is the sublimation of the physical world. Which leads us into where we're standing right now, the month of Shvat. What's the significance of this month of Shvat? So the month of Shvat is the 11th month. Now the word Shvat, this is a tremendous secret the Rebbe teaches us. The month of Shvat is the month of the Redeemer. Mashiach himself. If Tishrei is the power of the redemption, what's the power of the redemption? The Teshuvah that we need to do to bring the redemption, the uncovering of the depth of our soul, of our essence, to engage God on the essence, which leads us to the Torah that we need, because without the Torah, nothing could be done, which leads us to a Torah, to a teaching, which through this teaching, we're going to get the guidance of how we're going to manifest Mashiach's light, how we're going to bring the redemption. And then we apply it in the month of Teves, in the cold winter, in sublimating the physical, including coming to America and doing all the work, including 2,000 years of darkness. It's all winter. That's the whole point of exile. Working in the dark, from the dark, and finally reaching the lowest part of the world and lifting the world up from the bottom up. Where do we reach? What happens next? We have the Redeemer himself. We have the winter Mashiach, which, as we discussed earlier, is not the person who comes on a mountaintop with a turban and he appears and it looks like he's coming out of the Arabian Nights, like somebody out of nowhere, some fairy tale guy. No. A person from the world, a tzaddik who lives with the Jewish people during the time of exile, the tzaddik who like Maimonides describes Mashiach in his book of Halacha, not like Maimonides describes Mashiach as a super tzaddik, as a mystery man who lands in Israel on a mountain and does such miracles and he stuns the world with miracles. That's a Mashiach intervention. That's God intervening emergency with Mashiach, and that's not what God desires in this redemption. He wants a Mashiach organically, a Mashiach that goes and reaches the four corners of the earth and elevates every human being, a Mashiach who speaks to every Jew and gets him to do a mitzvah, a Mashiach who inspires earth to become holy. When does that Mashiach reveal himself? In the month of Shvat. Why? Well, if the work was done, now the Redeemer comes. So the Rebbe says it's hinted to in the word Shvat. Shvat is the same letters as the word Shevet. Shevet is the famous prophecy where Jacob blesses Judah, Yehuda, the father of kingship. He says, Lo yasor Shevet mi Yehuda. The ruling power will never go away from Judah. And a lawgiver will never remove from his feet, from between his feet. Ad ki yavoi Shiloh, until Mashiach will come. So Mashiach is called Shevet. How do we also see it in Numbers? And when Bilam prophesizes the Geulah, when he prophesizes the ultimate Redeemer, what does he say? He says, Darach koichav mi Yaakov, a star will shoot forth from Jacob. V'kam Shevet, v'kam Shvat, Shevet, same word, Shin Vet Tes, same word, come Shevet, a ruling power will get up from Israel. So the Rebbe says Shvat is the month related to the Redeemer himself. And he says there's another meaning. Shevet means a stick, the king who rules with a stick. A scepter, like the king holds the scepter or the ruling stick, but it also means a branch. Like the Shevatim, the tribes are called Shevatim because they're branches. There's the tree trunk, which is Jacob, and the branches, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, the 12 tribes are like branches from the tree. Shevet means a branch. When it depicts in Isaiah, when it speaks about Mashiach, what does it say? V'yotzer chayter migeze yishai, sapling will grow, migeza, from the branch of Yishai, which is talking about the branch of Mashiach. There will be a branch growing in this world, which is referring to Malchus Beis David, which is referring to the kingship of David HaMelech. All of that is hinted to in the word Shvat. Okay, so Shvat is related to redemption, because the word means the ultimate ruler, the Goel, the Redeemer. But here's the secret of it. Shvat is the 11th month. And the Rebbe makes a tremendous to-do about the significance of Shvat being the 11th month as being the month of the Redeemer, because in the Redeemer, he embodies the energy of the entire redemption. In other words, all the work we do produces this powerful divine connection between us and God. The empowerment of that revelation travels through the one chosen by God, who is Mashiach, who activates redemption in the entire world. In Judaism, it is a must that we believe Mashiach is a human king. Talmud says, whoever says, Ein Mashiach li Yisroel, Talmud, there is an opinion in the Talmud that says that God will be the Redeemer. I see some people writing that in the comments. That's Hillel's opinion, not Beis Hillel, not the Hillel, the sage of the Mishnah, but a later Hillel. He says there won't be a person, it will be God. Rambam does not rule that way, and the Chassam Sofer, great, says that anybody who says that is today's days is considered a heretic. Jews have always been praying for a human redeemer, as Tzemach David Avdocha Meheres Atzmiach, a descendant of King David, and there's thousands of prophecies that emphasize it will be a human king. So his power and his ruler power is related to the number 11. Why is that? So we need to give a little bit of an understanding of what's the essence, and just very, very, very briefly, the essence of Mashiach's, of the revelation of the time of Mashiach, is that God will be revealed everywhere, everywhere, and everywhere. How much will he be revealed everywhere? Thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly. There will not be a cell in the human body. There will not be a point in existence that will be devoid of powerful revelation and consciousness of God. God and no matter how thick and dense and coarse, or no matter how disconnected something is right now, it will be saturated with the divine truth. It will affect animals, it will affect the inanimate. Everybody will know God. As it says, V'nigla kavod Hashem, the glory of God will be revealed, V'ro kol basar, and all flesh will know. What is it going to take for such revelation? Of course, we discussed earlier, it's the purification that we do. We do mitzvot with the physical world, we purify. But we're purifying everything and making it ready for revelation. The revelation itself, for it to be uniform, for it to be universal, and for it to be everywhere without exception, it's only when God will unplug his utter infinity. It has to be an infinite revelation. Now, if it's an infinite revelation, means it's above the divine system through which God usually, currently reaches out and interacts with the world. The system that God interacts with the world is a system that controls, contracts, limits his light, puts limitations to his light. Because the system is a system that puts limitations to his light, that's the reason why there are places that are more luminous with God, with divine revelation, and there are places that are darker. Till you get low, and there's no light. Remember, we discussed this when we were talking about the beam of light, the kav, the or yasha, the direct light. It gets weaker and weaker as it's descending because it's coming through a certain constricted system. That system is a system of sefirot. All divine interaction with the world comes through a system of 10 sefirot. Anybody who learned any bit of Kabbalah knows that. There's a system of 10 sefirot. 10 sefirot represent the entire configuration of divine attributes through which God interacts with the world. And that's the number 10. 10 is a very powerful number because 10 represents the entire gamut of all the divine lights, everything shining, everything turned on at one time. Awesome. 10 is holy, 10 is crazy holy, but it's still limited. And it's therefore not Mashiach's light. Mashiach's light is the light of number 11. Why? Because what's number 11? Number 11 represents that which is above the system of 10. What's above the system of 10? Kabbalah calls it the crown. The crown is above there's a human, there's an image, there is a system of a divine human. Above him is the crown, but crown shouldn't be seen as what sits on his head, but what encompasses and surrounds completely. What that really means, God's light, or God's deeper even than his light, in the crown itself, there is the external element of the crown, which is more his light, and then there is the deeper element of his crown. Ultimately, too, we get to what was called Atik Yom in the Ancient of Days, which is God's very self. And when that is unplugged, it's everywhere and everywhere the same. There's no limitations and no boundaries. Now, this is very deep, and there's a lot to talk about. I'm just giving you a nutshell. But it's not enough to just turn on the infinite. To turn on the infinite and not being careful, what's going to happen is going to destroy the entire world. It's going to destroy the entire system of 10. That doesn't either work. And then what's going to happen? You blow existence out of you just completely dismantle the entire existence because everything melts in God's infinite light and infinite presence. And that's the secret of number 11. Secret of number 11 is to attach the 1 above the 10, but to attach it that it should permeate the 10. Not that it just you reveal this higher light and you forget about the 10. You keep the 10 intact because the 10 is the system through which the entire cosmos are created. But but to the 10, you turn on the 11th dimension. And the 11, that's why you say it's 11, because you're counting 10 and 11. And the one on top of it. There's a level the Zohar refers to Chad V'loi B'chushbon. God as he is not part of the calculation of Sefirot. And you're taking that dimension and revealing it and unifying it with the world. That's the infinite light of Mashiach. That's why Mashiach's energy is number 11. And that's the significance of the month of Shvat. Now, when the Rebbe speaks about it, in his talks, the Rebbe very much is connecting it to the Rebbe himself, who is the 7th of a series of rabbis, as we discussed earlier, who the Rebbe said when he became Rebbe is to bring the final the divine light to this world. But when the Rebbe himself, and here's the thing, I'm going to share with you a crazy teaching, but it's not anybody making it up. The Rebbe himself points this out in many talks, especially the talks that he gave right before his stroke. It means his last stretch of talks, in his last winter talks, in the month of Shvat, which is this month, the Rebbe spends maybe 3 or 4 talks, or at least 3, in which he's elaborate and on the deepest level explaining what the significance of number 11 is in connection to him being the Rebbe of Chabad and consequently the Jewish people. What's the Rebbe's connection to number 11? Number 1, the Rebbe was born not in the month of Shvat. The Rebbe's birthday is in the month of Nisan, which is the first month of the Jewish calendar. But he's born on the 11th day of that month. Okay? The Yud Aleph Nisan, everybody knows, is the Rebbe's birthday. The 11th day of the month of Nisan. However, when the Rebbe was 48 years old, or actually almost 40, I think he was 47, going on 48, his father-in-law passed away, and he was appointed on the first anniversary of his father-in-law's passing when he was 3 months before his 48th birthday The Rebbe then accepted the mantle of leadership and became the 7th Chabad Rebbe. His father-in-law passed away on the 10th day of the month of Shvat. Again, the month of Shvat is the 11th month, but his father-in-law passed away on the 10th day of the month of Shvat in the year 5710. The Rebbe did not, for an entire year, he didn't want to become the Rebbe. The Chassidim were begging and pestering and begging, and he kept on no. But on the first anniversary, that's when he accepted and said his first Hasidic discourse and officially became the 7th Chabad Rebbe. What date was that? So watch this. It was in the year 5711 in the Hebrew calendar, 11. It was in the 11th month, which is the month of Shvat. He celebrated his father-in-law's passing the night after the yahrzeit. The yahrzeit is the 10th day of Shvat. The Rebbe had the first Farbrengen at the conclusion of that day. That means it was already after night. It was already on the 11th day. So it was the 11th day of the 11th month. To make that even more compelling, the Rebbe became Rebbe by saying a Hasidic discourse. The Rebbe was giving talks, but no one was sure, is he accepting to be Rebbe or not? He was giving talks and sitting with the Hasidim he was doing even before that day. The big deal was he going to say a Hasidic discourse, which is something that only a Rebbe does. The difference between a Hasidic discourse and a regular talk is not for now. But it's brief, it's the idea of divine channeling. That's the idea of a Hasidic discourse. The question was he going to say a Hasidic discourse? In the middle of the Farbrengen, someone jumped up and said, Rebbe, you're saying very nice talks, but Hasidim want a discourse. In other words, they want the real deal. At 10:40 at night, on the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th year. Now, 10:40 is in the 11th hour. The Rebbe began saying Basi Lagani, and he timed that he was in the middle of the discourse when it hit 11 o'clock. So you have 11. And now, it's not just that. But if you take a look at the energy of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it's exactly that message. The Rebbe is the person who declared, the first one in history, that Judaism does not have any borders anymore. Everybody knows that when I was a kid, I was not Chabad at all. I was living in Borough Park. We all knew that the Lubavitcher's anthem in those days was Ufaratzta. It's a famous song, which Ufaratzta means you will break all the God promises Yaakov. Ufaratzta, you will break Yama, Vakedma, west, east, north, south, all directions. You will break it open because Judaism will not have any borders anymore. Holiness will not be constricted only to Jerusalem. New York City, San Francisco, Bondi Beach, Australia, you name it. Doesn't make a difference where. Every single place there will be a Chabad house, there will be a shul, there will be a mikveh, there will be kosher food, there will be available to put on tefillin, there will be a yeshiva, Jews are learning Torah, children are saying Shema Yisroel, globally the entire world. The non-Jews will start hearing about 7 Noahide laws. The entire world, there won't be a place that's not holy. Obviously, it's only a preparation for the light turning on that's going to envelop all of existence. But the work, the final work to elevate all of the world, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the man of number 11, who's born on the 11th day of the month of Nisan, and his entire oomph as Rebbe is on the 11th day. So what is Shvat? Shvat is the Redeemer himself, the winter Mashiach, not the summer Mashiach, the winter Mashiach, because only the Mashiach who elevates the world from within the world. If it's a light coming from above, it can be from number 10. Light coming from below that reaches God's essence and opens that up, that's number 11. Where does that lead us into? That leads us into the month of Adar. Now, the month of Adar once you have the Torah of the redemption, which is the month of Kislev, first of all, you have already the Teshuvah that we did, which is the essence of our souls in Tishrei. You have already the Torah of the redemption, which is in the month of Kislev, which is Chassidus. You have already the work applied, which is the work dealing with the world, elevating matter, which is the month of Teves. You have already the Redeemer in place. What? Now, so everything is here. What do you need now? Now you need redemption. Now is when now the world is calling for the actual redemption. So when does Geulah, not just Goel, you can't have Geulah without the Goel. You need first the Redeemer. But once you have the Redeemer in place, now you can have Geulah. Geulah is redemption. So where does Geulah start? The month of Adar is the month of Geulah. Why? Everybody knows that the month of Nisan is the month of Geulah. B'Nisan Nigal, we will redeem the Nisan, and we will be redeemed the Nisan. However, the sages tell us that the month of Adar is also Geulah. They say, Mismach Geulah le Geulah. We want to bring, when there's a question, sometimes the Hebrew month of Adar is double month. I'm not going to get into it. In order to even out the Hebrew calendar, the lunar calendar with the solar calendar, there is some type of tweaking that we need to do every 3-4 years, in which we add an extra month. So the month of Adar is a double Adar. Sages had a question: when you celebrate Purim, when you have it's called a pregnant year. When you have such a year, when do you do Purim? Do you celebrate it in the first Adar or the second Adar? And they conclude you do it in the second Adar because you want to make the redemption be connected to the redemption. Mismach Geulah l'Geulah. Why? Because Purim is also a redemption. The Jews were redeemed from a horrific decree to wipe out the Jews. However, we know that the redemption of Purim, when Jews were freed in Persia, is considered an incomplete redemption. Why? Because Akati Avde Achashverosh Anan. Even after the redemption, the Jews were still subjugated to the Persian king. They didn't have their own autonomy. They weren't really free. Within the exile, they had freedom. So it was like a partial redemption. Nisan is the month that the Jewish people left Egypt completely, and we have complete redemption. So on a deeper level, what that really means is that there's two stages. When Mashiach comes and he begins the process of redemption, it comes in two stages. Stage number one is a redemption, but a redemption that is still very much working with nature. In other words, the redemption is you start seeing things moving in the world, Mashiach's power moving in the world, in where he's breaking evil. He's shattering the dark forces, like we discussed earlier. He shattered the USSR, shattered communism, it took down Saddam Hussein, all the shattering of evil that we're watching. I'm not going to get back into all that we discussed earlier. It's a power of redemption, but it's a redemption camouflaged in nature. It's part of nature. It's happening within the world, which is very significant and very important, because if Mashiach is all about sublimating the world, it has to be done with the world, from the world. It can't just be miraculous. However, notwithstanding how important that is, we still wait for the complete redemption for the month of Nisan, because the last and final touch comes from God himself kicking in. In other words, all of our work from below and all the connection of unification of holiness with nature, it's all crowned by a moment that is purely divine, purely revelation from above. So we can bring the Geulah, like in other words, the Geulah from below reaches like the highest point possible, and then we need just the power of God Almighty himself as he utterly transcends nature, no nature at all, just purely miraculous. That moment will be, and that's the moment that's related, however, to the month of Nisan. Nisan is when God took us out of Egypt. Pure miracle, suspended nature completely. Nisan comes from the word nes. Nes means miracle. So that's the final touch. So there's two stages. One is a process that we're watching, the world moving to redemption, things evolving. You see, if you're looking deeper, you can see the entire messianic process unfolding. That's related to the Purim redemption. Purim was also a story that didn't have a complete miracle like Moses coming. Purim was a series of natural occurrences, of events that led to the rescue of the Jewish people, where you can kind of see that God was dancing with nature. It's the miracle was completely intertwined with the world. That's the first stage of redemption now as well. So you have Redeemer in the month of Shvat. You have the redemption as it is with the world, and then you have the purely divine blessing that is the month of Nisan. Why is this year so special? This year, the month of Shvat and the anniversary of the day that the Rebbe became Rebbe, number 11, on the 11th day of the 11th month that we spoke earlier, is hitting its 75th anniversary. That number is extremely, extremely important. And I think on these last final touches, I'd like to give a class on that itself, which will mean that this Mashiach download of 2026 is going to have a 9th class. And in that class, I would like to bring it back to the question that we opened up with, finally, based on everything, why God's name is more pronounced in the secular number of this year, 2026, and in the Jewish calendar of the year, it's 86, which is a lesser name of God. Let's try to address that in the final class, which is going to be the ninth class, Be'ezras Hashem, which we are going to do, hopefully, maybe tomorrow night or maybe Wednesday night. We'll see. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here way before that. Thanks for being part of this.